Hello, good afternoon. We want to welcome you to, this is the third of our webinar series, Why Students Are Absent from School and How Can We Reduce Chronic Absenteeism. My name is Dwight Benjamin. I am the Area 3 High School Resolution Specialist, and I will be your host for this conversation as well. The purpose of these series is, as I have said on others, is they're designed to equip you with strategies and ideas that will help you to advocate for your children's academic success and to offer some actionable insights that parents can certainly use today. Our objective for this session is to discuss the relationship chronic absenteeism has on student academic success, grades, as well as student achievement, strategies in response to the attendance impact during the coronavirus pandemic, how to reduce chronic absenteeism, and just basically hitting the reset button so that we can be able to move forward in this here process. Just want to take a moment to introduce our guests. Our guest today is Dr. Robert Balfons from the University of Johns Hopkins University School of Education. We have also with us Ms. Christine Pierre. She's a certified people personnel worker. She in the Office of People Personnel Services with Prince George's County Schools. And I have a help partner on the side here who will be co-hosting and also monitoring and working with the questions and answers, Kalisa Finney. She's the Area 1 Elementary Resolution Specialist. So we just want to welcome each of you to this session, and thank you so much for taking time out in your schedules to address such a very critical issue here. And I'm going to take a back seat here momentarily and let them dive into all the information that they have to share and how we can address this particular issue. I just want to, just for the attendees, please certainly feel free to use the Q&A to pose your questions. Some of them will be responded to in writing, and you will be able to either get the transcript for the questions and answers, or we will read them. Those that were responded to in writing, we'll read them to you later. For those that some will be answered live. And but nonetheless, either way, you have the benefit of reviewing the webinar video later. It'll be share some information about that later on at the end of the video, but basically it will be on our YouTube channel, the Prince George's County Public School YouTube channel under the Area 3 office or under Area Office webinar series. So with that said, I will go back into screen sharing here so that we can dive straight into our session. Our first speaker today will be Dr. Robert Balfons, Director of Everyone Graduate Center and Research Professor at the Johns Hopkins University. So Dr. Balfons, welcome to our session on today.
Thank you, Dwight. I'm very happy to be here with everybody today. And I'm just going to spend a little bit of time just sharing what we've learned about how we can sort of collectively work together to make sure our students can be in school every day and sort of push back on chronic absenteeism. And I'll start with the obvious. It might seem like too obvious to state, but just it's good to remind ourselves that being in school on a regular basis really matters. From pre-K to college, being there is 75% of victory. Just kids that are in school regularly do well. Kids that are in school sporadically struggle. And until recently, really relatively few districts or schools measured or acted upon this idea of regular school attendance for all students, because really what we all came up with in public education was this focus on average daily attendance. What's your ADA rate, right? Many principals will know that. Many principals can tell you what's their ADA rate. But if you ask many principals how many of your kids are regularly attending school, they might not have that at the tip of their fingers because it's just not a common thing. So it's really important for us to really focus on this idea of how many kids are missing 10% or more of school, which is actually, it seems only, 10%, because that, but that's a month, right? That's just about 18 days. 18 days is about a month of school. And the other challenge, I'll just point out there really quickly, about when you just do average daily attendance, we can get fooled, right? Because we can say, oh, our average daily attendance is in the low 90s. And we're like, we all went to school. A 90 is an A, right? Yay, we got an A. And you say, okay, I have an A- for attendance, and my literacy proficiency is 35%. So clearly I have to really focus on literacy proficiency. And I know attendance can be better, but I got an A. And what it doesn't realize is that we can have 90% average daily attendance and still have 20% of our kids missing a month or more of school. And it's probably those kids in that category that need the literacy supports. But if we give literacy supports and don't focus on attendance, they actually won't attend frequently enough to benefit the literacy supports. So that's one way that average daily attendance sort of fooled us for a while, why it's really important to focus on how many kids are missing 10% or more of school, and how many kids are missing a very little bit of school. Both those things matter, right? We want to push down kids missing 10% and push up kids coming every day. And if we go to the next slide, a key thing to do about this is just really have information campaigns that aren't scolding, that aren't like, oh, you're going to be in trouble if your kid misses one more day, you're going to court, but is really just about keeping people informed of where their kids are, and kids themselves as they get older, and middle and high school themselves where they are. Because it turns out all of us overestimate how often we go to school. And when they've studied this, both parents and kids typically underestimate by as much as 50% what their attendance, how many days of school they've missed. And the reason for that is not because they're trying to fudge it. It's because we think of the very recent time. So you say, oh, how much school did I miss? Well, last month I missed a Tuesday, and maybe there was a Thursday. That doesn't seem too bad. I'm here most days. But if we look at our next slide, this is how chronic absenteeism sneaks up on us. We just missed 2 days here, 2 days there. Every month, that adds up to 20 days. We're chronically absent. But we might not trigger the system if we're just doing when is it when you miss 10 or 15 days until March or April, right? When the reasons we're missing school have already been set and left unattended for months. So that's why it's really important not just to track at the end of the year, but sort of in live time. We go to the next slide. Oh, this slide, yeah. Live time, 10% of school to date, right? And once we hit that, we then have to ask ourselves, what's going on? Because sometimes it could just be that the kid had pneumonia, right? Or it's a clear reason, right? It's a one and done. It's sort of, we can help them recover from that. But if it's some of these underlying causes, right? Either they sort of feel like, well, it's sort of okay to miss a day here, a day there. Like, stuff's happening in school, but it's some days not much goes on, and I can catch up, right? I've even had kids talk about like taking mental health days, right? They find school stressful and they need a break, and they take a day here, a day there, and they don't realize how it can catch up with them. And then some kids, it's actually barriers, right? This is both during COVID, we know this, right? There's illness in their family because of COVID, or they have to work because their parents are their job can't happen because of COVID, and the family needs income. When we're back to sort of face-to-face issues like transportation sometimes and safety and getting to school come to play, there's things that just are a barrier. There's other times when it's more of an aversion, right? I don't want to be in school for some reason, right? I'm being teased, I'm being bullied. We know this still happens actually virtually. There's still cases of kids getting sort of cyber bullying and cyber issues that we think that might, in some cases it's been minimized, but in other cases it's taken different forms. And that's sometimes why kids don't turn the camera on, right? Or because they don't want to create those interactions. And oftentimes it's sometimes because parents have had negative experiences, right? And they're just like, well, you just got to endure this and get through it the best you can, right? And then sometimes if those things are left unaddressed, they tend to lead to disengagement, right? Now it's like, I come some days, I come others, I'm just gonna come enough to pass, right? As long as I pass, it's okay. But the problem is kids are pretty bad estimators of how much they have to come to pass. or how you right, and they often get it wrong, and then suddenly they're failing their classes. And we know that's a big issue now with COVID, and turning assignments in and completing them. Again, it's probably a lot of the same thinking that I can miss a few and still make it, and it's a tense time. But they're not great estimators of that, right? So we really have to keep them informed of where they are. All right, next slide. So what do we do about this? Okay, one thing is we do have to monitor it closely and react quickly when we see folks trending towards chronic absenteeism, and we have to understand what's behind it, so we get our interventions right. Because if we don't, we can make it worse, not better. If we guess wrong, right? A classic example of that is that sometimes it's like the tough love approach, right? Your attendance is dropped off, and if you don't get your act together, it's going to really harm your future, right? You're gonna, you won't get to college, you'll struggle, working at McDonald's, and that's done with a good intentions, awfully. But if that person was actually missing to take care of a sick relative that helped raise them, or to earn money to keep the family's lights on, right? They have a sense that they are making sacrifices for their family, and now you're sort of coming down on them for not trying hard enough, right? And that, instead of inspiring them to work harder, could actually turn them against you, right? And make them feel like, you have no idea what I'm doing, you're just coming down on me, I'm done with you, right? And make it worse. So we really have to create this welcoming school environment, right? We have to assume there's reasons behind the absenteeism. It's not just a rejection of us or a rejection of schooling. And really build this sense of connectedness. This is the best antidote to chronic absenteeism, and it's the best antidote to many negative youth behaviors, is a strong connection to school. And it's been really well documented, actually, by the CDC of all people, and fits well with this current environment, that you're connected to school when you have adults who know and care about you as a person, right? You know that they care about you, like, I miss you, how are you doing, what's going on, why aren't, can we figure out why you're not in school? They have a supportive peer group. They're involved in pro-social activities, which is really helping others. And we often forget this with our adolescents, because it's often, they act like it's all about them. It's my world. It's all, it's me. And we sometimes play into that and say, your future, you're this. But it turns out kids are very motivated to help other people at this age. And when they feel being in school helps others, they're more likely to come to school than if we just tell them it's all about you. And then finally, you feel welcome in school for who you are, right? You don't feel like you have to change to be accepted. You're accepted for who you are. When you have all those things, you come to school, right? Absent significant barriers keeping you out. The other key thing is to use social recognition more than like stuff. It's, stuff can work shortly for incentives, but it's hard to maintain. And the first time you don't follow through, you've lost all your momentum. But it turns out kids really crave social recognition. So just shout outs, putting up pictures online, different ways to recognize, and really focusing on improvement, right? Not just the kids that come every day, because they'll all get all the recognition and other kids will feel that's unattainable, but really recognizing that improvement goes a long way. And then this idea of some people resist this, the kids should come to school because that's their job. But we really have to think about sometimes programming that compels students to come to school. And the most engaged students, online and offline, are often involved in what are called cognitively rich activities that combine teamwork with performance. Things like robotics, debate, drama, chess. And folks have actually figured out ways to do this online in different ways now. And that's the hook. It's like after you are involved in the 3 or 4 academic activities of the day, then you can participate in this very engaging team activity, right? And that's sort of the sort of hook to sort of compel people to be there, right? Something to look forward to every day. All right, next slide. The evidence is clear that it really helps to have this welcoming, supportive reaction to kids missing school. Like, you should react to every attendance, but it should really be the idea of how can we help you get here later today or tomorrow, and we miss you and we want you here, right? Assuming sort of the best intentions and that there's problems to be solved, right, that are in the way. And it's important to do this, to build someone who has a good relationship with a student should be the one to help sort of build that relationship and then dig deep into the reason why, right? Go through those reasons. Is it a myth? Is it a barrier? Is it aversion? Is it disengagement? and help figure that out. And it really often takes a good relationship to get underneath what's going on there. Next slide. And what this speaks to too is, again, is this is, we really have to think about building a problem-solving capacity in schools and districts. And in many ways, this is a new role for schools and districts, right? Because when it was sort of, kids and parents get their kids to school and we teach the ones that come. We really can't take that stance anymore, in part because the purpose of school has changed. And now all of our students have to graduate high school, prepared for post-secondary schooling or training, or they won't be able to support families. And if we're not graduating folks from our public school system that are positioned to support families, then the whole community, right, is sunk, right? So we really have to think about what capacities do we need to solve problems. And we're talking to students, those good relationships, we'll uncover groups of issues that we can solve at the group level. For example, again, more like when things get back face to face, sometimes it's a transportation issue, right? That's affecting a number of kids. Or sometimes it's like one that we've often observed is, again, with the best of intentions, schools have sort of tough love late policies. If you get to school late, 10 minutes, you get 10 minutes of detention, or you have to go to room 101 and sit with Mr. Frank for 30 minutes until the class change. And that's designed to be sort of a, austere environment. And, many kids have told us that if they know they're going to be late, and sometimes it's because they had to get younger siblings to school or other issues they think are legitimate, that rather than face that harsh reaction for being late, they might as well just be sick that day, right? And then sort of come back the next day and they actually get a better, more welcoming response. And that wasn't the intention of the school, right? But it was a thing that was sort of systematically affecting more kids than they might have thought. They don't know that until they sort of talk to the kids. And a number of people have pointed out it's similar with online things, that sometimes the issues that are affecting kids are not the ones we assume. And we really have to talk to them and with focus groups and things and say, what is preventing you from participating, from turning the camera on, from being involved in a regular basis. And then, we often then have to, as though some of those problems are serious and significant, we often then partnerships with wraparound service providers, right? And then the last thing I want to highlight is a powerful solution. Well, there's two more things, but we're on time. On the next slide, is this idea of success mentors. And this actually started in New York City. We were working on their chronic absenteeism campaign. And this is idea for kids that have a pretty serious history of chronic absenteeism, right? We know it's not a short-term thing. There's something underlying it. And it's really linking them up with a school staff member. It can be teachers, it can be security guards, it can be cafeteria workers, it can be front office people, anyone that wants to do it, forms a relationship and just continually 3 times a week sort of checks in on them. So excited you're in school today, Dwight. It just makes my day to see you here, and, are you ready to have a good day today? Anything we can do to make sure you're ready for your classes? Having any issues with any of your teachers? Wonderful, great. And I expect to see you tomorrow. And if I don't see you, I'm going to give you that call to see if we can get you in, right? So, all right. That takes 30 seconds. But for a good number of kids, you sort of have to do that continually, right? It's sort of like the waves hitting the beach, right? On the rocks, right? It needs to be done continually to sort of like have that, the kids to know they'll be missed, to build a relationship, and then get understand the root causes, and then be able to refer them, right, to the appropriate folks that can provide the supports needed. And just to add on is in New York City, they've been very effective shifting this to online supports. And when they shifted it to online supports, they focused as much on assignment completion as attendance proper, and that had been effective. All right, next slide. So where I really want to end up with is, because some of those things are pretty big initiatives, is I want to also point out that sometimes some small things can make a big difference. And I just want to share a number of those that have been shown to make a difference. The first is, like, again, with a student that has a sort of a track record of chronic absenteeism, actually have them write a rather detailed plan of what would it take to miss only 1 day of school next month, right? Start a step at a time. And it turns out the act of writing a plan makes it much more likely they'll act upon it than if they just sort of verbalize it and say, yeah, I promise I'll only miss one day next month. I can do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be dedicated. I'll be here. Just they found actually writing it out makes a difference and makes it more likely to happen. Keeping up with the Joneses. We all like to keep up with the Joneses. And it turns out that, again, that students really underestimate how good the attendance is often of kids that graduate and are succeeding in college. People tend to think their attendance is pretty normative. They don't tend to think that, oh, I miss school much, much more than other people, even when they do. And they're often surprised when they see, oh, I know Jose, or I know, right? And wow, he came 90, he missed just 3 days a year. Wow, I didn't recognize that, right? So just a little bit of that reference points to folks they know. We talked about how a day here and a day there can add up. That's sort of that calendar can't be beat as a visual. And also just tell students again, like how this, if it's just 2 days a month, it's 20 days for the year. Just even that connection, because kids just live in the moment and they don't sort of see the cumulative effect. Next slide. This is an important one for when kids return, right? Is that, again, that they have this, that they're welcome back without judgment or sarcasm. And when that happens, again, teachers aren't really doing that to be mean. Sometimes it's out of frustration. Sometimes it's out of just like they have that sort of jokey manner, right? But they don't understand how it lands. So if a kid has had some serious issues preventing them from coming to school, they had a barrier, they had an aversion, they've summoned up the courage, or they pushed through to go back to school after missing a couple days. And if the first thing they get is like, oh my God, it's my lucky day, I better play the lottery. Like if you came to school today, it must be my day that luck is high and I have my best odds of winning that lottery, right? And what that tells the kid is like, you don't really want me here. Like I got to go through all this work, and what I get is like this, like, oh man, like it's amazing you're here thing, as opposed to like just so happy you're here, right? So, and as soon as teachers learn that, that's an easy pivot for them, because that's really more a thing of being unaware and not really, something that's a hard viewpoint, right? That they don't want to shift. This idea that you're helping others by being in school, right? Getting back to this idea of a pro-social thing and sort of ways for sort of collective improvement or reaching attendance goals. And so this fits with the peer leader. That one of the more powerful things we've seen is sometimes when it's like homerooms or with advisories or some unit is recognized again for sort of most improved attendance for the week, or like most students with like who are there every day, that can flip the peer pressure sometimes, because sometimes it's like, yeah, it was, you were brave, you skipped school, wow, to like texting, where are you? You got to get here. Like we're competing to win, like, the pizza or the homework pass or the something, right? And you got to get here so we win it, right? And then also this idea of student to student, like 12th graders working with 9th graders, right? A very effective thing in some schools is they have, and it takes training and support, and it needs, it takes some work, but they train a group of very self-sufficient, seniors, right? To essentially be, again, like homeroom or advisory captains, right? And they assign each one to a 9th grade advisory, or a 6th grade, 8th graders to 6th grade advisory or homeroom. And as the captain, they tell their team that the first thing for our team to succeed is we all have to be here, right? And now it's that peer. And some schools were a little bit nervous, like with that peer, would they be serious or too harsh? And typically what they find, again, like you have to screen and train for the right student, is that they're the toughest of all, because they'll say like, don't play those games on me. I know all those games. Like don't try it. Like I know, you're on my team and you got to be here. And they can sometimes say things that like other adults couldn't say, right? That are appropriate, but to the point. All right, next slide. And then really the last thing is that sometimes it's a bad analogy, so I don't should use it, but it's like with cigarettes, right? Often people react to the smoke, right? And that's what you cough or choke, or what other people who don't smoke, object to, right? Being around, but it's really the tar in the cigarette that kills you, right? It's not so as much as the smoke, right? It's the ingredients within the cigarette. And with chronic absenteeism, where kids really get in trouble is that not getting their assignments done, right? I think that's what is happening a lot now under COVID, is, you know, you don't turn them in, and even if you pass the test, the final test or the final assignment, and you pass it just barely, there's a lot of zeros in that grade book for assignments not being turned in, and that leads to a failing grade. That in itself causes problems. Kids are like, hey, I passed the test, but you still failed me. Must mean you don't like me, right? And it's like it becomes a personal thing. But it really is, when kids are chronically absent, you need to have an organized system to help students get their assignments done. And that's really got to be back to this idea of building on relations with people that know the kids, and is a thing to keep track of. Because if you don't, that's how they really get behind. And then, you know, they fail classes and they get retained in grade, and it's sort of all, and then that's a reason to miss more school, right? It sort of cycles downward. So if we go to, I think, our final slide. Oh, well, this is why I decided this for COVID, sorry, was just that, again, sometimes it's challenging to say, what is attendance under COVID? And a number of folks have combined this idea of both being there and getting those assignments in, right? And they create sort of minimal, moderate, full participation based on both, you know, logging on or being present, but also to the extent to which you're getting your assignments in. And that brings those two ideas together. So we're not just checking, are you there, but are you there and getting your work done? And we can now skip ahead to we can skip the next one, which is a little more detail, and then go to the final slide, which is that there's many more useful how-tos and guidebooks can be both found at Attendance Works, which is a great organization. And then also there was a National Student Attendance Engagement and Success Center. And if you go there and click under webinars, there is about 30 webinars on all kinds of subtopics around absenteeism. And it's just been my pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I wish you the best of luck in working together to get your kids in school every day. I think you're on mute, Dwight.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess that's what I get for being the host, right? And muting myself. Thank you, Dr. Balfons, for recognizing my lip sync here. I was indicating that if you had any questions, you can certainly feel free to pose them in your Q&A. I'd like to thank someone for reminding me that I was muted, and I appreciate that as well. As far as the presentations, someone asked a question about the slide deck. I will certainly discuss that with the presenters and see whether or not that can be made available, if they are okay with that. But certainly the video will be recorded, is being recorded, and it will be made available to you at a later time, and we will send emails out, you know, regarding where to access that. So again, thank you, Dr. Balfons, for your presentation there. Our next presenter is Ms. Christine Pierre. She is, as I indicated, the people personnel worker out of the Personnel Services Office. If you would unmute your video, and we will turn it over to you.
And I am being told that I cannot unmute my video.
Okay, well, let's see what we can do about that there.
Okay, here we go. And
Okay, there we are.
Can you go back a slide, please?
Sure.
Right. Okay. So we are at another inflection point, and as always, the need at inflection points is to be compassionate and affirming. In 2015, at the launch of My Brother's Keeper Alliance, President Obama said this: there are consequences to inaction. There are consequences to indifference, and they reverberate far beyond the walls of the projects or the borders of the barrio or the roads of the reservation. They sap us of our strength as the nation. It means we're not as good as we could be. And over time, it wears us out. Over time, it weakens our nation as a whole. The good news is it doesn't have to be this way. We can have the courage to change. We can make a difference. We can remember that these kids are our kids. For those are all our children. James Baldwin once wrote, we will all profit by or pay for whatever they become. So on the next slide, we know that children missing school is nothing new. The study of this pattern of absences when students miss 18 days of school unexcused or excused is gaining attention because of the impact on students' overall achievement. The Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015 demands that we pay attention to chronic absenteeism. Children are chronically absent throughout all school districts in all 50 states and in most countries around the world. In essence, chronic absenteeism is another major public health concern. In the state of Maryland, children between the ages of 5 and 18 must attend school on the Maryland's compulsory attendance law. In Prince George's County Public Schools, Administrative Procedure 5113 drives the work on attendance. All school personnel, parents, guardians, students are encouraged to become familiar with this policy. As school personnel, we worry when we do not see our students. We count the days, but we know that many of our parents are more acutely focused on providing for their children and surviving the hardships of their circumstances. They're not keenly aware of the damage that chronic absenteeism has on their child's success. Our goal is to increase awareness among the entire community to understand chronic absenteeism and its impact on students' achievement, and to understand why this is happening and to commit to change. Next slide. Okay. So I have to brag a little bit about this slide because my son helped me, he created this. And so the graphic shows at a glance why it is important to count the days. In Prince George's County Public Schools, students are in class receiving instruction for approximately 6 hours every day, mostly 5 days a week for 180 days a year. Chronic absenteeism, again, this is both excused and unexcused absences, is 10% of the total number of days that a student is enrolled in the school. This means, therefore, that if a student has been enrolled in school for 180 days, that's the entire school year, and that student misses 18 days because of, let's say, illness or suspension or any unexplained, unexcused reasons, that student has missed a total of 108 hours of lost instruction. For students in the early formative years, pre-K to third grade, missing 108 hours of instruction significantly reduces their opportunity and capacity for reaching developmental learning milestones. It is important to know that for chronic absences that are excused, students are entitled to make up miss assignments, and schools are required to keep account of assignment logs, especially for out-of-school suspensions. The bottom line is that even when makeup work is available, students still have missed the actual instruction. Many students do not turn in missed assignments for grading, especially at the middle and high school levels. It is also important to note here that suspensions are a major driver of chronic absenteeism. And we will revisit this again. Next slide. So nationally, the data estimates that 5 to 7.5 students are chronically absent every year. Data from the Department of Education reveal that chronically absent students are more at risk of missing the mark for learning milestones at the elementary level, as stated. Again, these are formative years, and they form the building foundations for reading and math skills with the goal of attaining proficiency by 3rd grade. At the middle and high school levels, a history of poor attendance leads to failing grades and courses and not graduating on time or at all. The data shows that chronic absenteeism is a greater predictor of high school dropouts than our test scores. Next slide. Thank you. So, who is chronically absent in Prince George's County Public Schools? We know that the students who need the most help face the most challenges in our communities. They are the ones missing the most school. Chronic absenteeism exists in every community, but students from different races and ethnicities experience chronic absenteeism at different rates. The U.S. Department of Labor cited in 2016 this alarming data showing that nationwide, compared to their white peers, American Indian and Pacific Islander students were 50% more likely to lose 3 weeks or more of school. Black students were 40% more likely, and Hispanic students were 15% more likely. Students with disabilities were 1.5 times more likely to be chronically absent. The data on this slide represents the rate of chronic absenteeism for all students in Prince George's County Public Schools during the 2019 school year. This data is collected by Maryland State Department of Education and reported on the Maryland Report Card, which is available to the public. At a glance, the report shows that this data is in line with national reported data showing American Indians, Hawaii, Pacific Islanders are disproportionately chronically absent, as well as Hispanic kids, as well as African American students. Okay. So why? Nothing in the literature that I've read suggests that chronic absenteeism is a result of poor parenting. In fact, there are many varied reasons why students miss school. These include illness, out-of-school suspensions, childcare, poverty, transportation, lack of transportation, community safety concerns, violence, mental health concerns, substance abuse, family emergencies, food insecurity, housing instability, homelessness, lack of adequate health care, lack of health insurance, immigration concerns, parents' lack of understanding about absences. Yesterday, I heard Congresswoman Val Demings speaking to the issue of systemic racism when she stated that we need to get serious about dealing with some of the social ills, the quality of life issues affecting our communities. She went on to say that we have been talking about these issues for decades, but have never done anything substantive to address them. These same barriers represent the quality of life issues that many of our students are facing. These barriers became acutely magnified during the pandemic, where new obstacles were identified. These include, but are not limited to, lack of internet service, lack of devices, lack of space, parents' work schedules, lack of supervision, inadequate technological navigation skills among students, parents, and dare I say, staff. Language barriers were intensified, along with a lack of adequate phone contacts, information that we could not reach some parents. Some parents and students stated that they just did not understand how to use a computer. Literacy barriers, job loss, loss of income, students needing to work to help support income, students taking care of younger siblings, students left unsupervised, isolation, loneliness, mental health deterioration, fears, stress, anxiety, depression, and death. Prince George's County Public Schools response was immediate. The attendance policy P5113 was realigned to accommodate working parents of students in pre-K to third grade. Devices were distributed to all students as well as hotspots. The parent center was quickly assembled to assist with technological difficulties. Prince George's County Public Schools website was constantly updated to keep parents engaged. Meal sites serving generous, healthy meals, including suppers, were quickly assembled throughout the community. Our CEO, Dr. Monica Golson, hosted town hall meetings for students, parents, and staff for the entire community to keep everyone informed and engaged. Pupil personnel workers and other school staff contacted parents of missing and disengaged students, identifying the needs, support, providing that support, and re-engaging parents and students in distance learning. Next slide. So what can you do? This is a school-wide, community-wide effort. Actually, previous slide. Yes, okay. Prince George's County has invested in removing barriers to student success. At the classroom level, we cannot fix the problems of housing, food insecurities, violence, social injustice, etc., but we can welcome students back into the classroom space with genuine warmth and acceptance. People are motivated by the positive far more than the negative. All Here, one of the research-based external partners for support that the county has invested in, suggests that we get to know the students and families, that we maintain brief, constant messaging to parents, that we provide specific information on students' attendance, that we increase parents' awareness so that they can count the days. Parents are the expert on their own children and their need to feel comfortable sharing information about their children with school staff who need to know. Parents also need to feel that they are a part of the school community, and schools need to make them feel welcome. Knowing that the reasons that some students do not attend school, we know that the reasons are often outside of their control. We must then take steps to positively frame communication about attendance concerns that fosters that genuine care and concern. We already know that teachers are the first line of defense in supporting chronically absent students. Often teachers are the first to know about the family struggle because students trust their teachers. Teachers must then have support and training to move that data to inform school teams and internal stakeholders. We must all adhere to the attendance policy as outlined in Administrative Procedure 5113. Pupil personnel workers provide monthly attendance reports on chronic and habitual absences to all schools. In the past, the focus was primarily on habitual attendance data. That is where all the missed days are unexcused, or we are not aware of the excuses. These absences still demand attention. There is a shift for schools to pay more attention to chronic absent data as a diagnostic tool to identify when prevention and early interventions are needed. This is especially important as we look forward to our return to school and the approaches in place to deal with behavior issues. Chronic absent data includes all out-of-school suspensions. Suspended students lose instructional hours in the same way as a student who missed school for illness. With this data in hand, we, that is the school, families, and community partners, can better determine the causes of chronic absenteeism and implement approaches that address barriers to get into class. Essentially, the data will drive the actions necessary for all stakeholders to become more psychosocially responsible for all students, because we know better. We know what the underlying causes are. So the reset, we are excited. We want to be back. Our students want to be back. And we have a mandate, right? Every Student Succeed Act is the mandate. Under this act, schools must track and report chronic absent data. Schools are encouraged to use supportive, not punitive, multi-tiered positive relational models to re-engage students and parents, starting with meeting the students where they are. We may not know exactly where they are because they've missed a lot. We know that parents want their children to succeed, and we want to give them the opportunity to take recovery steps to become fully engaged to improve school attendance. Prince George's County Public Schools, as a system, has been working to do this reset. The work is on the way in cluster meetings, principal meetings, stat data meetings, bridge to excellent schools, district meetings, special projects, attendance task force meetings, school intervention teams, and student support teams. These support a deep dive into the data, the policies, state and federal mandates, and provide guidelines to develop action and outcomes. Prince George's County Public Schools currently has 65 schools designated as full service community schools, providing wraparound services to students and families. Throughout the county, administrators, pupil personnel workers, attendance secretaries, school registers, school psychologists, building services, professional school workers, school counselors, teachers, social workers, community school coordinators, mental health providers, restorative coordinator, parent engagement assistants, crisis intervention resource teachers, student engagement specialists, special education coordinators, school nurses, school bus drivers, and community partners, cafeteria service workers, all are ready to do the collaborative work to support students and families by removing barriers, rebuilding lost relationships, and minding the gaps to ensure that every student succeeds. We encourage parents to join in. Thank you. These are some of the resources. All here is the platform that we have to support a number of our schools. And please take a look at the Maryland report card. And Dr. Balfan's already mentioned attendance works.
Great, thank you so much, Christine, for sharing that great information there. We don't have any questions in the queue. However, there were a couple hands that were raised. I'm not sure whether or not they were not able to make note of their question or not, but Mr. Zekawang, I'm going to allow you to speak if you wanted to ask your question. Mr. Zekawang? Julius? Okay. So,
Hello.
hi, yes, we can hear you. Is that
Yeah,
Julius?
what did you want me to do?
I'm sorry, Julius?
Yes, sir.
You want to repeat your question?
Oh, no, I didn't ask a question.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's see, are there any other questions here? There's one question, will Prince George's County Public School engage in attendance works? Dr.
Ms. Pierre? You're on mute. Are you able to answer that question for us?
Oh, attendance works is available. I get it through my email. There is a newsletter that's available. You simply just sign up to get notices for information.
And on their website, they have a lot of tools, like free tools you can use. They have guidebooks, they have data charts, they have videos. There's a wide range of sort of tools and resources available for free on their website.
Okay.
So it's not a system-wide effort. It's a resource that's available for anyone who'd like to use it.
That's correct.
Yes, Attendance Work is a for-pay organization that monitor attendance and so forth. And as Dr. Balfon said, you know, whatever information you can ascertain from their website obviously is, you know, free information. But at this particular point, we have, as a district, that's not a conversation that we've had in terms of partnering with them and establishing, you know, any type of relationship in that respect. Someone commented in the Q&A, thank you for all the helpful information and suggestions. I have another question. As Prince George's County School, as a PGCPS parent, can we have login to allhere.com? I'm interested if allhere.com has student data. Christine, are you responding to that? You muted.
Yes, I was. All here is a support that a certain number of schools in the county they use that platform to track interventions for attendance data.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So this time we don't have any additional questions for our panelists. So we want to take this opportunity to thank you all for sharing such valuable information. We're going to ask at the completion of the webinar, we're going to ask that you complete, there's a 10-question survey that will immediately follow. Again, we will post information onto the website as to how you can obtain be able to review this or share with others from our YouTube channel. And I believe that that kind of wraps it up there. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen at this point and get our guests back on the screen there. And again, we want to thank Professor Dr. Robert Balfons from the Johns Hopkins University School of Education for joining us today. Ms. Christine Pierre, one of our own in our People Personnel Service Office. I thank her and her team for bringing forth that information. And my right hand here to assist with technical issues and questions. Kalisa Finney, want to thank you as well. And thank all the attendees. We had over 200, I think it was somewhere near 250 registrants today. And, well over 100 who actually participated. So we want to thank you all. And again, you can look forward to having this information soon in the PGCPS YouTube channel. Thank you again. Guess you have any closing remarks or anything?
I just want to thank everybody for having us today and spending your time with us, and just echoing that, like, there's a lot we can do to create the supports and conditions that enable our kids and families to attend every day and get the benefits from being in school on a regular basis.
Awesome. Awesome. Christine, anything?
Yes, thank you everyone for coming. We are getting really excited about continuing this work. We do it on a daily basis, and we will continue to do so.
Awesome. Awesome. In the event that you come up with questions, you can email me directly. My email should be in your registration information, but if it's not, it's dbenja, DBENJA @ptcps.org. And I will forward those questions and get responses back to you from our panelists. So again, we're going to end the session at this time. Thank you again so much, and have a pleasant remaining of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you all, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right.